Hi, sir. Can I ask you one quick question?
Hey guys, people often say that college degrees don't really matter anymore. So today I wanted to ask someone who's already wealthy and successful what they actually think about that idea.
Hi everyone, especially the young people watching this video. I'm 64 years old. I started my career more than 30 years ago as a regular software engineer. Later on, I founded my first technology company when I was about 30. And over time, I built a few more companies in the fields of technology and data systems. Companies I'm involved with employ a few hundred people in total. Over the past 3 decades, I've personally interviewed and worked with a lot of people. Because of that, the question about degrees is something I've thought about many times throughout my life. There's a very common phrase on the internet these days. People like to say that a college degree doesn't really matter. And to support that idea, they often bring up a few famous examples. Bill Gates dropped out of college, Steve Jobs dropped out of college, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college too. When you hear those examples, the story sounds very simple. It sounds like you don't really need a degree in order to succeed. But there's one important detail that many people tend to forget. Bill Gates dropped out, but he dropped out of Harvard. Harvard is one of the most difficult universities in the world to get into. That means before he dropped out, he was already good enough to enter one of the most competitive academic environments on the planet. So the real story isn't that an average person dropped out of school and became successful. The real story is that an exceptionally talented person left school because he had a bigger opportunity waiting for him.
So in a way, the story is often misunderstood.
Very much so. People like Bill Gates didn't succeed because they dropped out of school. They succeeded because they were already extremely capable. But the discussion about degrees isn't just about where you study. It's also about how the real world actually works. Imagine you're running a company and you post a job opening. Within a week, you might receive 200 resumes, 200 different people, 200 different backgrounds. Some are recent graduates, some have years of experience. Some switched careers, some have interesting personal projects. But the reality is that you can't meet all 200 of them. You simply don't have the time. So hiring systems have to do one thing, filter quickly.
And that's where degrees start to come in?
Yes, but not only degrees. Experience, projects, technical skills, all of these things are signals. Employers look at those signals to make an initial decision. If a resume shows strong work experience, interesting projects, and also a degree from a respected university, it naturally creates a stronger sense of trust at first glance. That doesn't mean the person is automatically better than everyone else. It simply makes the initial decision easier. And here's something many people don't realize. Sometimes you might actually be the most talented person among those 200 applicants. But you can still be filtered out in the first round because your resume doesn't show enough signals for someone to recognize your ability.
So does that mean degrees are actually very important?
Not exactly. Degrees can help, but they're not the whole story. And over the past 30 years of hiring people, I've seen both sides of this problem. Sometimes very talented people get filtered out too early because their resume doesn't show enough signals. But other times, the opposite happens. Someone with a perfect resume and impressive degrees makes it through every early filter, and yet they still turn out not to be the right person for the job. I've seen many situations that made me rethink the whole idea of degrees. There were times when I looked at a resume and thought, this person is probably going to do extremely well. Perfect resume, impressive degree, prestigious university. But when the real work began, things didn't always turn out the way people expected. I remember about 10 years ago, we were hiring for a technical management position. One candidate had what looked like a nearly perfect background. He graduated from a very well-known university, later completed a master's degree, and his academic record was excellent. When our HR team first reviewed his resume, they were almost certain he would be the strongest candidate. At the beginning of the interview, everything seemed fine. He spoke clearly, very logically, and he clearly understood the theory behind the field. But when we started going deeper into real-world situations, things began to change. I asked him a fairly simple question. Imagine that the company's system goes down in the middle of the night while a major client is actively using it, and your engineering team is panicking because they don't know where the problem is coming from. What would be the first thing you would do? He started answering in a way that sounded very much like a classroom exam. A lot of technical terms, a lot of concepts, a lot of structured explanations. But something was missing. It didn't feel like the answer of someone who had actually been in that situation before. After a few more questions, it became clearer. He understood the theory extremely well, but his real-world experience was limited. In the end, we decided not to hire him. That experience taught me something important. A degree can open the first door, but if there's no real experience and no real problem-solving ability behind it, that door can close very quickly.
So are you saying that sometimes a strong degree can make someone look more capable than they actually are?
Not exactly. A degree simply shows that someone performed well in a particular academic environment. But real work is far more complex than that. That's why I always say that a degree is not the whole story. But I've also seen situations that go in the exact opposite direction. I've met people whose resumes looked very ordinary at first glance, yet they ended up becoming some of the most capable individuals I've worked with. I remember a young man who came in for an interview at our company almost 20 years ago. He was about 25 years old. His resume was very short. No college degree, no official work experience. The only thing that stood out were a few software projects he had built on his own during his spare time. To be honest, if that resume had gone through a large corporate hiring system, it probably would have been rejected in the very first round. But during the interview, he started explaining how he had built an entire software system from scratch, how he taught himself new programming languages, and how he debugged problems when things stopped working. And you know what was interesting? As he talked about those projects, you could clearly see something. He was genuinely curious. Not the kind of curiosity people show when they're trying to impress an employer. The kind of curiosity that comes from someone who truly enjoys solving problems.
So he was the kind of person who does the work because he actually loves it.
Exactly, and that's something you cannot measure with a diploma alone. We hired him. A few years later, he became a technical team lead, and many years after that, he was the one sitting in the interview room evaluating candidates who had graduated from top universities. Stories like that made me realize that everyone's path is different. Some people begin their careers with excellent degrees. Others begin with curiosity and self-learning. But the people who go the farthest are usually the ones who never stop learning.
So in the end, the real difference is the willingness to keep learning.
Exactly. And that's where many people get confused. School is a very good place to learn. It gives you structure, guidance, and experienced teachers. But school is not the only place where learning happens. The world today is very different from the world 30 years ago. You can learn from books, from the internet, from online courses, from personal projects, from mentors, from communities. But no matter how you learn, one thing never changes. You actually have to learn. If you only chase grades, certificates, or diplomas without truly understanding what you're studying, you will eventually hit a limit. But if you learn because you want to understand things better, because you want to solve problems better, that learning stays with you for the rest of your life. And when you observe people who are truly exceptional in any field, technology, science, business, or art, you will notice one thing they all have in common. They never stop learning. They may have left school many years ago, but they never stopped being students. Over the years, I've come to realize that the question about degrees is actually just a small part of a much bigger question. The real question is this: are you becoming better over time? Because the world doesn't stand still. Technology changes, industries change. The things you know today may become outdated in just a few years. And if you stop learning, you fall behind much faster than you think. That's why I always tell younger people who work in my companies something very simple. Don't assume that learning ends when you leave college. In fact, for many people, real learning only begins after they leave school. In school, you learn the foundations, but in real life, you learn how to apply those ideas, how to make mistakes, how to fix them, and sometimes how to learn entirely new things you never expected to study in the first place. There's something interesting about careers that many people don't notice when they're young. When you're 20 or 22, it's easy to believe that your entire future will be decided by a few big choices. Which university you attend, what degree you get, which company you join first. But when you look back after 20 or 30 years, you realize something different. A career is rarely shaped by a few big decisions. It's usually shaped by hundreds of small ones. Did you take the time to learn something new today? Did you try to understand a problem more deeply? Did you challenge yourself to improve a skill, even when nobody asked you to? Those small decisions, repeated over many years, slowly shape who you become. That's why I say the most important thing isn't the diploma on your wall. The most important thing is whether you keep learning. You can learn in a university or you can learn outside of one. But if you stop learning, even the best degree in the world will slowly lose its value over time. Let me ask you something. Do you think I have a college degree?
Honestly, it's hard to guess. But one thing I'm sure about is that you're clearly someone who knows what he's doing.
Well, the truth is I don't have a college degree. The early years of my career were actually quite difficult. I was pretty good at what I did, at least compared to many people around me. But almost no company wanted to hire me. Not because I couldn't do the work, but because my resume didn't have the one thing most hiring systems expect to see: a degree. Eventually, I had to take jobs that weren't even related to the field I wanted to work in. For a while, I worked at a small electronics repair shop just to pay my rent. During the day, I worked there. At night, I went home, studied programming, and took on small freelance projects whenever I could find them. Some of those projects were tiny. Sometimes they paid just a few $100s. But every project taught me something new. That period of my life was really tough, not just financially, but mentally. It's a strange feeling when you know you're capable of doing more, yet nobody is willing to give you the opportunity to prove it. I think many people who have struggled early in their careers understand that feeling. But over time, things slowly changed. As I completed more projects, my experience grew. A few satisfied clients recommended me to other people. Larger opportunities started to appear. And eventually I realized something. Instead of constantly trying to convince companies to hire me, maybe I should just build something of my own. So I started my first company. And honestly, if I had earned a college degree back then, I probably would still have started my own company and done the same things I'm doing today. But the road would have been much easier. That phase of working outside my field just to survive, that was not easy at all. So hey guys, if you're currently in college and you think studying is difficult, trust me, it's still a lot easier than trying to convince the entire world that you're competent when you don't have a degree. In the end, a degree can help you move faster through the first part of the journey, but it can't walk the entire path for you. Whether you have a degree or not, the most important thing is whether you keep learning and becoming better over time.
Maybe the real question isn't the degree itself, but the person behind it. If you found this perspective interesting, feel free to share the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments.